Hello, everyone, and welcome to our third class. And it's going to be the best yet. Of course, why not? Because it's the sixth day of creation, and there is so much to talk about. And so we're just going to jump in and figure out exactly what's happening. So it says, and we are on day 6. It's Perek Aleph. It's the first chapter, Pasuk Kaf Daled, verse 24, and it says as follows. Vayome Elohim, Totze haaretz, nefesh chaya lemina, behima, varemes vaychaito eretz lemina, vayichen. And God said, let the earth bring forth every kind of living creature, cattle, creeping things, and wild beasts of every kind. Vayichen, and it was so. Vayas Elohim et chayat haaretz lemina, ואת הבהמה למינה, ואת כל ברמס האדמה למיnehu, vayar Elohim ki tov. And God made wild beasts of every kind, and cattle of every kind, and all kinds of creeping things of the earth. And God saw that this was good. Vayar Elohim ki tov. So far, not that exciting. It's not that different from what we've seen. We've got another God said, and it happened. We've got a God making something, and then we're having that God saw that it was good. Okay, so we're using our common verbs there, the vayomer, the vayas, and the vayar. Okay, and we've talked about here that the vayas, the making, is something which is coming from the heavens, and regardless, everything that God is doing there is good. Animal life is coming from the ground, from Adama. We're going to see that when we talk about Adam's creation versus how he's created here in Perek Aleph in the first chapter versus how he's connected in Perek Bet. So just keep those up there, those ideas there. But straightforward, starting out here, it seems to be that animal life is coming out from the ground, and that's that. Okay. Sorry, my vayas statement. I'll take it back. Vayas doesn't have to be from the air. Vayas is also coming from the ground. But again, the vayomer is coming. That's the first step, and then the vayas is it comes to realization, and then the vayar, and God sees that it's good. All right. Now, we're on verse 26, and here's where it's going to get interesting, which I'm sure we're going to have a lot of commentary and comments from all of you. It says as follows, Vayomer Elohim, and God said, Naaseh Adam betzalmenu kidmutenu. Let us, in the plural, make man, betzalmenu, in our image, kidmutenu, like our form or likeness. Okay, I'm going to say that again and make sure that everyone was listening. And God said, let us make man in our image and in our likeness. What is strange about this? What is not like the rest?
God's likeness is like him, no?
Okay, so God says, let us make man in our image and our form, using the plurals. The first thing to strike you is, yes, it's like that man is going to be like God. But the thing which strikes me is that God is used in the plural. Is God one? As I was told, Hashem echad u'shmo echad. He is one and his name is one. But here it's implying that God is plural. Why?
Or who's the we?
Who's the we? Okay. Why create? If I'm going to be dictating something, so say I am God right now, I don't have that type of ego, but let's imagine for a second, and I want to dictate to some faithful scribes what to write. And one of my core messages is monotheism. Why would I have in my opening chapter, let us make man in our image and in our form? Okay, there's going to be answers we're going to present. But why create such a stumbling block? In the first chapter, okay, I'm not going to say it's the royal we, God's talking to the angels, God maybe he's talking to the animals, whatever.
Included.
Whatever answer we come up with, it doesn't address the issue. But why is God creating in chapter 1 an attack on monotheism? I don't have an answer on that. I'd love to hear it.
I don't think that's an attack on monotheism.
Why not?
It's including us, the humans, he's making us feel included. I don't think he's saying you are all going to be other gods. I don't understand what.
Okay, so I'll say it again. God said, I'm not sure who he's talking to, but God said, let us, plural, make man in our image and in our form. Who is God speaking to when he says, let us make man? So there are possibilities to this. One answer is he is talking in the royal we. Like the queen would say, today we are going for a walk, rather than today I am going for a walk. Okay, it's the royal king. It's God is talking in the royal, first person plural. Okay, fine. Or God is talking to the angels. We don't know. The angels haven't been created. They haven't been discussed. That's definitely in Midrashic material. It's definitely in the Kabbalistic material, but it's not something which is explicitly taught. Or God is talking to the animals. Those are your possibilities, because the only other possibility doesn't work for us, which is God is talking to multiple parts of himself, which he can't have because God is one. So I still leave it with, I have answers for why, but it doesn't address the bigger question of why create ambiguity. And I think I have an answer now that I'm saying it out loud. But Jeff,
I have a
the Chavod, go on.
I want to ask, and it's not an answer, but it's a question. But I wonder if there's some difference here. The other I never. This is also the first time that rather than just saying there should be this thing, there's a precursor, which is let's make this thing that talks about the making before the making. Is that a fair analysis?
There's a more of a description. It's not just.
It's not like God said, Totsei haaretz, or God said, you go back through each time it's God saying, creating through speaking, but there's a speaking and then a creating. But here
that seems to be that the conversation is directing us towards a situation where God is consciously making man, implying that what? God, either man is the reason for creation, which we've discussed over the last couple of sessions, or perhaps, don't hold me back, I'm going to create man with all his strengths and his weaknesses, man with all the problems, all the benefits he brings in. We're going to do it. And don't forget that man at his highest is in the image and the likeness of God. And we're going to get into what that image and likeness of God is. But it's going to still remind us that this is a very conscious choice to do.
All right, here's my first theory that I'm going to throw out there, is that Hashem is speaking not to himself and not to other deities, but to everything he has created up until this point, with the idea of partnership,
like animals. Yeah,
like the animals. And do we have a likeness to animals? Absolutely. And that's its own constant tension for all of us of, when am I operating with my animal self and when am I operating with my divine self, and everything in the middle? And that interconnectivity of everything that Hashem creates plays a role in our existence.
Absolutely. I think that's a very much a fat level of understanding it. That who is the we? The we is the animals, the other created organisms, to tell them together we are now going to partner in the main event. Okay, we're going to have the stage set before we establish it. Rob.
Yeah, when I think of things that are really ambiguous, I don't think of this. The really ambiguous parts of the Torah are things like the red heifer, completely unexplainable. We just don't understand what it means. Why do you need a red heifer to consecrate? It doesn't make any, there's no explanation given for that. And of course, there are many other examples where there's just a chok, a law that gets given that we don't have any background for. There's no explanation for it. And when I read this, I'm getting an explanation. I'm getting some, this is not so ambiguous. God is saying what he's doing. He's saying why he's doing it. And he's saying what it's going to look like. This is, I don't think this is.
Okay, but who's he talking to?
Well, he's not introducing ambiguity in the way that he does when he gives us some of the unknowable commandments later. He's giving an explanation here. And I feel my feeling about this is the opposite of ambiguity. It's like an understanding.
Okay, so I agree with you, Rob, that it's very clear what his goal is. My ambiguity is who is he talking to? And again, I can give possibilities, I can give suggestions, I can give answers, but it's not answering necessarily the piece of why add that thing in there. Is it ambiguous? It's not ambiguous what he's doing and what the goal is, but who he's talking to and why he would do that is open to interpretation, especially in a world when the Torah was first given, when polytheism was much more popular than monotheism. Okay. Yes.
I read somewhere, can't remember where, that God was actually talking to like the essence or whatever there was before people were created, whatever there was that was people. And he was actually talking to people about that it was a joint project between people and God to create these items known as people who would become in the image of God.
Yeah, I think that fits as well. That's a possibility. I don't like it as much because we're going to see in this whole creation story, again, both here in a couple of psukim and not later in Perek Bet in chapter 2, that what makes man, and in chapter 2 it's about God breathing through the nostrils, as it were. I'm going to try to unpack that when we get there, to create man. So, and if that is the spirit, or that's the soul, or that's the ability to think or to speak, it's still like before man is created. I think that implies the soul as well. I mean, again, we're going to talk about what it means to be created in the image of God. I don't think it's our physicality which is the image of God. It's our ability to speak, our ability to think. And if that's the case, or to have a neshama, have a soul, and if that's the case, is that soul in potential? And that's who God is talking to? It's possible. I mean, again, we don't have the answer for it, but it's certainly something to carry on thinking through. Let's read a couple more psukim, and let's see how far we go. So it says as follows. We're in the middle of that pasuk. V'yirdu v'dgat hayam u'b'ach hashamayim u'v'behema v'chol haaretz u'v'chol haromes al haaretz. Okay? And they shall be in charge, or they shall rule over the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, the cattle of the whole earth, and all of the creeping things that creep on the earth. Okay? And then it says, Vayivra Elohim et ha'adam betzalmo, b'tselem Elohim bara oto, zachar unkeva bara otam. And God created man in his image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Okay. Now again, most of us do not pay attention. When we're reading this, we talk about being created b'tselem Elokim, in the image of God, and we talk about that it's not a physical image of God, but being able to have the character traits of God, and that we are born, and this is important in Judaism, we are born spiritually perfect, spiritually pure, without blemish, without sin, without anything. And we have, and as we get older and as we have our shortcomings, we become more corrupted by our behavior. But we are born perfect, unlike other religions which consider, and this is true after Eitz Hadat as well as it is before the tree of knowledge. We still have this concept that we are born pure. But here, what's interesting here, it says that God created them. How was Adam created? As a hermaphrodite, with male and female. Okay? In chapter 1, man is created male and female. We're going to see in chapter 2 that when God creates man, Adam is created separately, and then the woman is created from his rib. But here in chapter 1, the role of man is created in the image of God, male and female, and to rule over the earth. Okay, we see that very much in the next pasuk as well. Vayvarech otam Elohim, God blessed them. Vayomer lahem, and he said to them, Elohim, God said to them, Peru uruvu, be fruitful and multiply. We've seen that before. Umil'u et haaretz, and fill the land. V'chivshuha, and rule over it. Conquer it, master it. Urudu bidgat hayam v'shamayim b'chol hayar u'meset al haaretz. Rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the heavens and all the beasts and all that creep along the land. It's a very interesting description of man's role in the world. Here, what is man's role? To rule over it, to conquer it, which means, if I just read chapter 1, everything in this world, all the animals, all the birds, all the fish, all the vegetation, all of the environment, it's for my pleasure. I can do whatever I want with it. I'm going to show mastery over it. I can burn all the fossil fuels I want. Right here. But again, hold it in thought for a second, because in chapter 2, and we'll do a proper analysis when we get there, in chapter 2, what is the role of man? Le'ovdah u'l'shomra, to work or to serve, and to guard or protect. So on the one hand, I have man as a master, showing dominance, who can do anything he wants, who's both male and female, who's in the image of God. And in chapter 2, it's a man who's single, who has to work and protect. Which one is it? And is created from the dust of the earth. And the divinity in him is that God blows through his nostrils. This is very different stories being told here in chapter 1 at the end and chapter 2 of what man is. Is man in his essence male and female together? Is man in his essence a male and female was only an afterthought? Is man is in essence to show mastery over the world and do whatever he wants? Or is man is in his essence meant to look after and protect and serve?
Question for you.
Yes,
Why-
Jeff.
Why? So I hear why you're concluding this idea that the gender that they carried dual gender, but that seems like the simplest reading could simply be when it says otam, it means both the zachar and the nekeva. There were men and there were women. that God created them. So there's plural. And since we know, since in Hebrew, plural male could mean all males, or it could be males and females, why are you concluding, what in the language is having you conclude that they're hermaphroditic, that that they're dual gender?
God created man.
Yes.
That's, I don't understand where you get the
Yeah.
singular and then the plural.
So I've got a singular and then a plural, and how you deal with that singular and then that plural. So one way of understanding it is that singular is Adam, and Adam is both. And then there was a separation, or was that separation at a later stage? Or is, again, chapter 1, is it really going into the details, or is it going into the idea? So what is human beings? Human beings are tselem Elokim. And there are male ones and there are female ones. But the first one was what? When God made man, what was it? Both. I mean, that's the way I understand it. I mean, again,
Can I read it a
yeah,
little differently?
absolutely.
So-
Again, this is the beauty of learning.
Vayira Elohim et Adam, B'Tselmo,
Hmm.
that God created Ha'adam, maybe like an idea,
Hmm.
right? In his
The concept of man in his form.
but B'Tsem Elohim bara oto,
Mhm.
that in the likeness of God he created him, meaning Ha'adam. And then when it changes to the plural, it's suggesting we've transitioned from the idea of the concept of man to the application of man, which was men and women.
Good. Totally. That's an easy read, and it's even the way that it's broken up in the structure of the Ta'amim as well. So definitely.
That is supported by the Ta'amim?
Mhm.
Okay.
B'Tselem Elohim bara oto. Stop. Zachar nekeva bara otam.
Okay.
So yeah, absolutely. Yes, Susie.
Well, if you're saying that Eve was always part of Adam until the rib thing, then how would you account for the Lilith story to fit in with this?
I'm not even going there because I don't see any of it. I'm going on a very straight read of what I see.
Okay.
I'm trying
Okay.
to limit as much possible extra text and extra midrashic material, and perhaps material which is even outside of midrash, because I'm just going with my descriptions. Right now, I have Adam. I don't have Chava yet. She's not named as Chava. I don't have an Isha even right now. At this stage, I just have Adam. And Adam is both, there are males and there are females, or, as Jeff wants to say, or as I want to say, there is an Adam who is both male and female. But when we're going to read chapter 2, you're going to see a very different story. I just want to foreshadow, again, it's very difficult here to explain what's going on in chapter 1 without understanding chapter 2, because chapter 2 seems to have many, many contradictions on chapter 1. So either chapter 2 is more detail and chapter 1 is just generalities, or chapter 1 and chapter 2 are representing two very different types of humanity. And again, I've mentioned this before, that you can read perhaps Soloveitchik, who has a very much a breakdown on what it means, what chapter 1 represents and what chapter 2, especially when it talks about the roles of man, whereas one is in charge and is in control and is running the world, and one who is taking care and working and protecting the world, and where we are in that sphere. And sometimes we can find ourselves unbalanced in that equation where our desire to rule and to conquer is too much, and our desire to protect and to serve is too little. We have to keep those working always in unison. What's also interesting here is, and again, I like to be as provocative as I can possibly be. You read the next pasuk and look at number 29. It says, "Vayomer Elohim," and God said, "Hinei natati lachem et kol esav zorea zera asher al pnei kol haaretz, et kol haetz asher bo peri etz zorea zara, lachem yeh leochla. ולכל חיית הארץ, וכל עוף השמיים, וכל רומס על הארץ, אשר בו נפש חיה, את כל ירק עשב לאוכלה, ויהי כן." And God said, "See, I give you every seed-bearing plant that is upon all the earth, and every tree that is seed-bearing fruit, they shall be yours for food. And to all the animals on land, to all the birds of the sky, that's everything that creeps on earth, in which there is breath of life, I give all the green plants for food," and it was so. What I want to tell you, friends, is not only were we human beings vegans, but so were the lions and the tigers. Every single animal, bird, fish, human being were vegans in chapter 1 of Bereshit. It was only post-flood where man was given permission to eat meat, and perhaps also the carnivorous animals also were given the permission to eat meat as well. But at this stage of the game, the ideal for man is to be vegan. Now, I want you to hear that well, because if I could take psukim and just present them in a certain way, I am suggesting a situation where the role of man is to look after the environment and be vegan. And these are ancient ideas. These are not 21st century ideas of how do we deal with a world which can't sustain the meat industry, in a world where the environment has its challenges. This is ancient ideas coming out. So this is not a politically correct text. It's not saying, here's a solution to the environment. Everyone should be vegans and we should be working and serving the planet. No, this is the Torah, almost 6,000 years old, given at Sinai 3,300 years ago. And here we have it, and it's telling us, be vegan and look after the world.
See, what I've noticed in the text wasn't, I mean, I appreciate all of that, but also where's it's a Toveret?
I haven't got that. So you have to wait for the tree of knowledge of good and evil is not going to come until chapter 2. But we're going to get, and that's another explanation. The chapter 1 is generality, and chapter 2 is going to be a bit more. And you also have to almost wait also to chapter 3 almost. Chapter 2, it gets like a mention, and in chapter 3, it really gets its heading, by the way. It's like, by the way, there was a tree in the middle of the garden, and foreshadowing, we're going to come to that later. So in chapter 1, it doesn't even get a mention. Why? Because Garden of Eden hasn't been mentioned. None of that comes up in chapter 1. That's all going to be in chapter 2, after the laws of, after the description of Shabbat. But here we have it, and again, I just want to just put it out there once again. The idea that man could be male and female, not sure, but could be, that man is created in the image of God, that's all human beings. Understand, Judaism is revolutionary, not only for teaching monotheism, but also the notion that all human beings, all humanity, regardless of religion, race, creed, every human being is created in the image of God. This, again, not revolutionary to us in the 21st century, but when it was first taught, and dare I say it, revolutionary probably until mid-20th century, this idea that every human being is created in the image of God. Not so for, look at our recent past. Look at our contemporary times. It's still a challenge for people to see the image of God of every human being. And here we're saying it. You don't have to be. It's not saying, and Jews are created in the image of God. I could imagine that in other religions. We're saying every human being is created in the image of God. Okay, male and female, He created them, and this first man, he is meant to be a vegan. He's meant to, at least in this chapter, rule over the world. And then we're going to see in chapter 2 some of the other ideas going on. And it says here at the end of day 6, in that last paragraph there in the middle of the page, Vayar Elohim et kol asher asa, and God saw all that He had done or He had made. V'hinei tov me'od, and it was very tov. It was very good. Vayer vayivoker yom hashishi, and it was evening and it was morning on the 6th day. What is different here? Me'od. It's very good. It's not just good, it's very good. And what else is different here?
He gives a name to the day. I am not aware.
Good. It doesn't say Yom Shishi. It says Yom Ha Shishi, the 6th day. And so we have two questions. What is it about the 6th day which is very good? Well, I can just said He created man, that was good too. Why is it very good? So here, I think the answer could lie on God has now concluded creation. And in that stage, not only are each of the the small components good by themselves, when they are put together, they are very good. They are excellent. And perhaps more, even the things which aren't good by themselves, when put together, they are very good, which is, those things which you wanted to yourself, why did God create the mosquito? Other than He likes my sweet blood. I mean, what is it about those types of things? Why did God create certain things which seem to be only negative? And it's saying, no, everything together has a reason, has a purpose, has a function. And together, that is Tov Me'od. That is very good. Now, what about, Elisa, you said it there, Yom Hashishi, the 6th day. What's the Hey coming to tell us?
It's an important day.
So that's definitely the Pshuto Shel Mikra, that the 6th day is the most important. The 5 days of creation were leading up to the 6th day. But if that was the case, I would do the same thing. Hashevi'i, the 7th day. The 6 days are leading up to the 7th day. So it has to be more than that specific day was very important, because if we're going to talk about the days of creation, the 7th day is by far more important than the 6th day, even though the 6th day is the creation of man. So what is it about? What is Hashishi referring to? So a number of midrashim, which the commentaries bring, is Hashishi. The Hey stands for Chamisha Chumshei Torah, the 5 books of the Torah that will be given on the 6th day. What's the 6th day? The 6th day of Sivan, which is creation stands on what? Torah. And that what? That the Jewish people will accept the Torah on the 6th day of Sivan. But if they will not accept the Torah, then the whole purpose of creation was null and void. Everything will go back. It's a midrash. It's not the pshat. It's not the simple way of understanding it, but it's saying that the Hey there is telling us that this 6th day when man was created, man was actually created for the purpose of Talmud Torah, learning Torah, and specifically the Jewish people who will bring Torah to the world. The idea, the notion that the Torah is a blueprint for creation, that the Torah is before creation itself, that is there. Now, again, I bring it because I think it helps to answer a text. the whole notion of when do we bring commentary, when do we not bring commentary, when do I bring midrash, and not like my mother-in-law was bringing in some commentary about Lilith. I don't bring it because I don't see it in the text. When I see a reference to the text, then I bring a midrash. When I see a question which is unanswered, that's when I'm going to bring you something. But when I don't see it out there, it's not dragging me or grabbing me, I think we can leave it. But here, when we're seeing these questions of what does it mean to be created in Tzelem Elokim? You know, in Pirkei Avot we say it's wonderful that we're created in the image of God. If you don't see even better, that God told us that we're created in the image of God, which is, imagine if we didn't know that. It's telling you, you have a higher calling, you have a higher power. You have to answer to a higher power, which is, you can't just say, I have animal urges, and so therefore that's why I am the way that I am. Being created by Tzelem Elokim is telling me, being created in the image of God, I'm more than my animal desires, my animal urges, my cravings, my desires, my urges. No, there's more to me than that. There is a godliness to me, whether that's the soul, spirit, the Yetzer Tov on my shoulder, the good inclination on my shoulder, or the bad inclination on this one, whatever it might be. There we go. By the way, another way of answering Tov Me'od is not just the Yetzer HaTov of the human being, the good inclination, but also the evil inclination. Says Rashi there that if it wasn't for the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, man would never procreate. Okay, sometimes you need to have a bit of an evil inclination to get you to have drives. And so therefore, harnessing the negative to make it into a positive is also part of life. And so therefore, the Tov Me'od, the very good, is when you're able to take your Tov and your Ra and your bad, and you can make them both Tov Me'od, very good. And also there's the understanding there of Me'od, meaning your Me'odecha, with all your with all your efforts, with all your, everything that you're doing, like we say in the Shema. Okay? Yes.
Okay. On day one, it says V'yar Elohim et ha'or ki tov. Okay. So we have an object. God saw a particular thing and it was good. And all the subsequent days, on day 3, V'yar Elohim ki tov. No subject, no object, just that God saw good, that it was good. Same thing is true with day 4. Same thing is true with, I'm just checking my logic, with day 5. And then on day 6, and then on day 6, at the beginning, after he makes all the mammals, it's V'yar Elohim ki tov again. But here we bring a subject back in, and the subject is et kol asher asa. And so there's some bookends there, like all the stuff that happens between the middle is God saw that it's good, but not specific. But in the beginning, on day 1, he sees the light is good. And then on day 6, he sees whatever et kol asher asa is. So it's like a summation.
I think that kol asher asa is including the things which are not listed, and it's a summation of everything there.
Correct. Which could also connect with the hashishi, which is this. There's a completion. There's a starting with the or on day 1. It's the first thing that's good, and now there's a summation at kol asher asa, and that's could support the hashishi also. Because it's a conclusion. It's a point in time, not if you have this span of continuity from the moment of light to the moment of completion of creation, that's a span of time. Is it 6 days? Is it 13.5 billion years? But you have a point in time that's specific. Hashishi is the end of a term. It's like that.
No, I like it. It's very nice. So,
Rabbi, may I go
yeah.
back to the ambiguity of Perek 26?
Mm-hmm.
So it says, and God said, let us make man in our image after our likeness. They shall be in charge of the fish of the sea. So I don't think he was talking to the animals when he said that. It seems more to me that God created with his word, he created. So by saying, let us make man in our image, he was going to create man. Does that make any sense to you?
Right, but who's he talking to?
What I'm saying is, we are told that God created with his word. By saying something, he created something.
Absolutely.
But I don't know if it's a bad translation, but it says here that God is talking, they shall be, man will be in charge of the fish of the sea. So he was talking about man, not about the animals. Am I making sense? It says here, and God said, they shall be in charge of the fish of the sea. So he's talking about man, he's not talking to the fish of the sea.
But
Correct.
who's he
That's what-
talking to is
Yeah.
the question.
He creates by talking. So that's my point.
No, I think the question is, let us. So who's us? That's the question we're asking. Let us make man. Who's us?
I'll let you think about it a little longer. It's not as straightforward. Again, the question is way better. The question is way better than the answer.
You got me. Sherry.
Okay, the question is better than the answer. I just wanted to tell you one more thing. This is the end of the chapter. This is the end of the perek. And then the Torah talks about Shabbat. Why is it a new perek? It would imply, if I just want to give you a little bit of understanding here, a new chapter would imply a new topic, a new section. Okay? Unless we understand that the whole system of Perek and Pasuk is of non-Jewish origin. Okay, in the Middle Ages, the church fathers broke down the Bible into chapter and verse to use against us, so that they could tell us, they could use it and break it down better for them. And they didn't understand the Torah the way we understood the Torah. And so they broke down things. And there are many examples, but here is the one right in front of us where they consider Shabbat separate, whereas we consider Shabbat part of creation. So here, the 3 psukim of chapter 2, which really should be the last 3 psukim of Perek Aleph, if we were going to break it down, says as follows. Vaychulu hashamayim va'aretz v'chol tzava'am. You'll find it very familiar. It's Kiddush on Friday night. Vaychad Elohim bayom hashvi'i melachto asher asa. Vayishpot bayom hashvi'i mikol melachto asher asa. Vayvarech Elohim et yom hashvi'i vaykadesh oto. Ki vo shavat mikol melachto asher bara Elohim la'asot. What is the 7th day called? It's not a trick question.
Shabbat.
Nope, it's called Yom HaShevi'i. Shabbat is not called until
Here.
Matan Torah.
But by Shabbat.
Correct.
There.
It's telling you that's it's foreshadowing, but it's not given the name Shabbat, is not given and is not celebrated or observed until we can talk about whether the Avot kept certain things or accepted certain things. But the notion of the being called Shabbat, you're not going to see until Yetziat Mitzrayim and we get to Matan Torah. Okay? Now, what does it say? Vaychulu hashamayim v'haaretz hazram. He completed, or the heavens and the earth were finished. Vaychal Elohim b'mashri. God completed on the 7th day from his work, which he did. and he rested on the seventh day from all the work that he did. And God blessed the seventh day, and he sanctified it, or he separated it. Remember, Kedusha is holiness, but it's also, or sanctification, but it's also separating it. He rested from all the work which God had created to do. Okay, so I mean, that wasn't the best translation, but because on it God ceased from all the work of creation that he had done. Okay, but again, that's not a great translation either.
From everything he had done.
He Shabbat from all the work that God had created to make, to do. Okay, I was saying that assault. I wasn't happy with either. But understanding that resting is an active form of creation. And I want to just put that out there for a while for you to think about. Resting is part of creation. You can, but I want to develop an idea, but you can ask away. Go ahead. No, go on.
Why is it before in Lamed Aleph, Kol Asher Asa, singular, after we've had Hashem in the plural, maybe, now we have it singular, and then we end it with La'asot in the plural
It's
again.
not plural.
Asa Asot.
La'asot is in the infinitive verb form, to make.
So it couldn't be Asher Baralehim Asa. It has to be La'asot. Is that what you're saying?
Of course it could be asa, but that's not how it's formed. It's just a grammar. Asot is in the infinitive. Okay. I'm going to erase that. Just playing. All right.
Creating is resting. Go.
Creating is, no, I lost my train of thought. Creating is resting. Resting is creating. That there is a notion here, which is something which we struggle with when it comes to Shabbat observance. That we think Shabbat observance is making Kiddush, making Havdalah, going to synagogue, having meals, having a Shabbat shluf even, but realizing that resting from work is a necessary requirement for creative work. So I have my creative labors, my malechet machshevet, I have my creativity, and I do my work. That's Sunday to Friday. And then on Shabbat, I rest. That rest is an absence of creation, an absence of creativity. The resting allows for the creativity. Without one, you don't have the other. And God is saying, I'm going to separate and elevate Shabbat from all the other days, or this Yom HaShavi'i, because it allows me to appreciate those 6 days of creation. Again, this was a novel idea taught to humanity. Until this point, there were no calendars, there were no days, there were no weeks, there were no nothing. The idea of a 7-day week with one day separate from all the others is another truth which God gave to the world, which they did not understand. If I'm just reading chapter 1, one of the takeaways, one of the lessons from Bereshit, as this class is called from, is man is created in God's image, and God tells man that. Man is given specific instructions of what he's meant to do, what he's meant to eat. And then finally, he's told, no matter what you want to do, when it comes to Shabbat, this Yom HaShavi'i, it's a day of rest where all your creativity, all the things that you've harnessed, all the things that you've worked on, you appreciate on the 7th day. Much as our entire life is work, so that when we die, we appreciate it in Gan Eden. It's not something for us to appreciate. We can't carry on working when we get there. When we get there, they try and do more mitzvot. No, that's done. Now's the time to appreciate it and do that. So therefore, one can take the rest so that then one can harness oneself in for the next 6 days of a set. But as I said, in Judaism, this notion is, and we know this because on Simchat Torah, we read the entire section from Bereshit until Bara Elohim La'asot is one unit on Simchat Torah. And Because just structurally, Vaichulu, this phrase, and he concluded making the heavens and the earth. What's the first line? Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim v'haaretz, when God began creating the heavens and the earth. So obviously, these are bookends. The beginning is the creation, and the end is the concluding, that resting, and to have those signs for us. But making a day holy, what does that mean? What is this concept of Shabbat? It's awareness, awareness of God. And that awareness requires us to pause and take reflection. And that ability to not work is allowing us to be part of God's creation. Thanks very much, everyone. And next time, we will continue with Perek Bet.